Sometimes you talk about usage so that you can write a polished paper without much hassle. At other times, you talk about usage so that you can outmaneuver old-fashioned pedants who are too attached to their made-up rules. Other times, though, you talk about usage because you're in the middle of your PhD candidacy exams and don't have time for longer videos. But that's a whole nother story. Oh, I'm sorry. Did the way I said a whole nother bother you? Did you wonder, for maybe just a second, who I thought I was, teaching people about writing and then saying a word as stupid as "nother" on the internet for everyone to hear? Well, if you think that a whole nother is a stupid way to talk, let me say that we have got a whole nother side of that story for you to consider. Our story begins in the U.S. Department of English Usage. Oh, well wait. There is no Department of English Usage. Well, then maybe it begins in London at the Ministry of Anglophone Rectitude. Not one of those either, you say? Well, then I suppose our story really starts with the simple fact that there is no official body writing decrees about what is or isn't correct English. What counts as correct is simply what the most and usually most prestigious people do. Ain't is only forbidden because fancy people don't say ain't, not because it's wrong. And I think a similar thing is happening with the poor old phrase, a whole nother. You see, fancy people know that "nother" isn't a word, so they'd never be caught dead saying it on public radio. But regular people don't say "nother" on its own either. It only happens in the phrase, a whole nother. So it's really unlikely that dumb people are making up a dumb word like "nother" just to use it in one solitary phrase in English and nowhere else. But fancy podcasters can't say "nother," so they've resorted to saying a whole other. And that really opens up a whole other issue. Sometimes, when we think something is wrong, we invent a solution that sounds unnatural and comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of what's really going on. When people say a whole nother, they aren't being dumb and adding an N to the word other. Instead, what's happening is a process called Tmesis, where you take one word and stick another word in the middle of it. Fan-stinking-tastic, isn't it? So, we're not really dealing with the equation whole plus other. We're really dealing with the equation whole plus another. Now, it's pretty common to put a modifier between a determiner and a noun, so our ear is okay with putting whole in the middle of another. But because our ear is also rightfully attached to the word another, we can't just get rid of the N either. In other words, a whole nother is not a plus whole plus a dumb way to say other. It's really a whole nother, one word. When somebody says a whole other, they're making a snap judgment about the way people speak while also missing the reality of Tmesis and thereby fixing something that isn't actually a problem at all. Now, I can acknowledge that fancy radio people probably still feel insecure about saying a whole nother during the pledge drive. Fancy radio listeners just won't like hearing it. But that doesn't mean that a whole other is the way to go. Really, if you want a solution that honors the reality of language, but also keeps you from saying "nother," the best option is to start saying another whole. So, in conclusion, if you want to sound normal, just keep saying a whole nother. If you want to sound stiff and affected, say a whole other. And if you want to sound a little fancier but not ridiculous, go with another whole, and spare us another whole controversy that we never needed to deal with in the first place.